One of the greatest powers you and I can ever develop is not in what we say, but in what we choose not to say. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is strength in its purest form. Because when you learn to stay silent, when you stop fighting with the noise of the world and the noise inside your head, that's when everything begins to flow. Think about it. Most people are so busy trying to force outcomes. They talk endlessly. They try to convince. They try to manipulate. They push, they pull, they fight against the current of life. And in doing so, they exhaust themselves. They lose alignment. They lose clarity. But the one who understands silence, the one who learns to be still, becomes unshakable. Why? Because silence is the space where answers come. Silence is where intuition speaks. Silence is where your energy gathers, builds, and becomes unstoppable. Let me ask you this. How many times have you reacted in the heat of the moment, said something you didn't mean, and later regretted it? We all have, but the person who stays silent in that moment, the person who observes, who breathes, who waits, they don't just react, they respond. And their response carries power. Staying silent doesn't mean you give up. It doesn't mean you step aside. It means you align yourself with something greater. When you're silent, you listen more. And when you listen, you understand more. And when you understand, you can move in a way that feels effortless, natural, inevitable. That's the paradox of life. The less you force, the more things fall into place. The less you chase, the more you attract. The less noise you create, the more clarity you gain. So I want you to remember this: silence is not the absence of sound. Silence is the presence of power. It's the confidence to know you don't need to prove anything to anyone. It's the discipline to wait when everyone else is rushing. It's the strength to let life come to you, because deep down you know everything that belongs to you will arrive naturally. Stay silent and watch how the world starts speaking to you in ways you never imagined. Silence creates space for clarity and natural flow. And this is something most people overlook in their daily lives because they are conditioned to fill every moment with words, with sound, with movement, with distraction, and they miss the incredible strength that comes when you stop adding more and instead allow stillness to do its work. Imagine for a moment the difference between a muddy river being stirred up constantly versus a calm, undisturbed lake where the water is so clear you can see straight to the bottom. When everything is in motion, when everything is agitated, the truth is hidden. But when things are left to rest, when silence is allowed to settle, clarity begins to reveal itself naturally. This is what happens in our own lives, in our own minds, when we give ourselves permission to be silent, because silence is the gateway to deeper awareness. And in that awareness lies the path to effortless action. Most people are trapped in noise, not only the noise of the world, but the noise inside their own heads, the constant chatter of thoughts, doubts, fears, judgments, and opinions. They run from one thing to another, never pausing to listen, never pausing to let things settle, and then they wonder why they cannot find answers, why they feel stuck, why life feels like a never-ending struggle. But the truth is, clarity never arrives through force. Clarity never arrives by adding more noise. Clarity comes when you allow space, when you stop demanding and start listening, when you step back instead of stepping forward, when you allow the silence to do its work. Silence doesn't just mean not speaking. Silence means the discipline of holding back when you could rush forward. It means not filling the air just because you're uncomfortable with emptiness. It means trusting that what is meant to surface will rise in its own time. Think about it. When you are in a conversation and someone pauses, most people feel an urge to jump in and fill that gap because they think silence is awkward. But the person who is comfortable with silence, who allows it to linger, who waits, often ends up in control, because silence draws truth out of others. Silence makes people reveal themselves. Silence creates the space where the real communication happens. In the same way, and silence with yourself allows you to draw out your own truth, to hear the voice underneath all the noise, the one that doesn't shout but whispers, the one that guides you toward what is real. Clarity doesn't come from overthinking. It comes from quieting the noise long enough for the real answers to surface. How many times have you wrestled with a decision, trying to think your way into a solution, going in circles, stressing, analyzing every detail, and then when you finally let it go, when you stop trying so hard, the answer just shows up? That's not coincidence. That's the natural flow of life when silence is allowed to create space. It is the same in every area: relationships, business, personal growth. When you learn to step back, to be quiet, to let things breathe, suddenly clarity appears where there was confusion. You realize that you don't always have to chase. You don't always have to force. You don't always have to fill. You just have to create the space for things to fall into place. Nature itself works this way. A seed does not need constant noise to grow. It needs space. It needs quiet soil. It needs time. The river does not force itself around rocks by fighting. It flows naturally because it knows its direction. The tree does not rush itself into becoming a forest. It stands silently season after season, and everything it needs comes naturally. We are part of that same flow, but we forget it because we try to control, we try to fill, we try to dominate, instead of letting silence show us the way. When you allow silence, you give yourself permission to breathe again, to detach from the chaos, and to see things as they are instead of how your racing mind interprets them. You start to notice patterns you missed. You start to hear signals you ignored. You start to connect dots that were always there but drowned out by noise. Silence is not empty. Silence is full. It is full of wisdom, full of insight, full of truth waiting for you to notice. And when you give it space, when you honor it, clarity arises not with strain but with ease, because that is how clarity works. It cannot be forced. It can only be revealed. Most people think if they are not speaking, not acting, not moving, they are falling behind, but the opposite is true. Silence is not an action, it is preparation. It is alignment. It is the gathering of strength before you take your next step. When clarity emerges from silence, your next action is sharper, more precise, more effective, because it comes from alignment instead of confusion. You spend less energy doing the wrong things and more energy on the right things. You running in circles and start moving in a straight line. You stop guessing and start knowing. That is the power of silence and the clarity it brings. So many breakthroughs in history have come not in moments of frantic activity, but in moments of silence, moments of solitude, moments of stillness. The mind, when quiet, becomes a powerful tool and inspiration flows naturally. The answers that seemed impossible suddenly reveal themselves because you stopped trying to hammer them into existence and allowed them to emerge on their own. Great leaders, great thinkers, great creators all understood this principle. Silence is not wasted time. Silence is the birthplace of clarity and creativity. When you practice silence, you also cultivate patience, and patience is the partner of clarity. Without patience, silence feels unbearable. But with patience, silence becomes fertile ground. You begin to trust that everything has its timing, that not every answer must come immediately, that forcing an outcome often delays it, but allowing silence gives it permission to arrive in its natural flow. This is why silence is so powerful. It teaches you to trust life. It teaches you to trust yourself. It teaches you to allow instead of resist. Silence creates space for clarity, and clarity creates space for flow. When you are clear, life begins to move differently. Opportunities appear where you thought there were none. Paths open that once looked closed. People show up who align with your vision. And because you are no longer rushing, no longer shouting, no longer filling every gap, you see what was there all along. Flow is the natural state of life, and silence is what allows you to align with it. When you stop interrupting life with noise, when you stop filling every space with distraction, life has room to move, to breathe, to reveal itself to you in its full power. Power lies in observing, not reacting, because the moment you react without awareness and you surrender control of yourself to the situation, to the person in front of you, to the environment around you, but when you choose to observe first, you give yourself time, you give yourself leverage, you give yourself power that most people never access. And observation is about seeing what is really happening beneath the surface instead of getting pulled into the first wave of emotion or impulse. When someone says something that triggers you, when life throws a challenge your way, when circumstances shift in a direction you didn't expect, the first instinct for most people is to react. They lash out, they defend, they resist, they try to control, and in doing so, they often make things worse. But the person who observes, who takes a breath, who waits, who studies, discovers the truth, that reacting is often weakness while observing is pure strength. Think of the greatest strategists in history, the leaders who shifted the world, the athletes who dominated, the negotiators who always seemed to win. They did not achieve those results because they were the loudest or the fastest to react. They achieved them because they mastered the art of waiting, the art of observing, and the art of holding back long enough to see what was really going on. Power belongs to the one who can sit in silence and watch while everyone else rushes into action without direction. Power belongs to the one who does not reveal his hand too quickly, who does not let emotion dictate decisions, who does not let the noise of the moment decide the course of his life. Observation creates clarity, and clarity creates effective action. When you observe, you notice things that most people miss. You see patterns in human behavior. You recognize opportunities disguised as problems. You identify weaknesses in the arguments of others. You detect the energy in the room, the tone beneath the words, the truth behind the facade. And the moment you see what others cannot, you gain the ability to influence outcomes, to position yourself where success becomes almost inevitable. This is why power lies not in reacting, but in observing. Because reacting means you are always one step behind, but observing puts you one step ahead. When you observe first, you also take back authority over your emotions. Anger, fear, jealousy, pride, these emotions are powerful and they drive most people to make decisions they regret. But emotions lose their grip when you watch them instead of acting on them immediately. And the person who feels anger rise and chooses to observe that anger instead of unleashing it gains power. The person who feels fear but pauses long enough to see it clearly begins to separate truth from illusion. Observation creates distance between you and the emotion, and in that distance you gain choice. That choice is where your power lies, because while most people are slaves to their impulses, you become master of your state. Observation is also the birthplace of wisdom. Every lesson in life requires attention, and when you react too quickly, you miss the lesson. When something happens, your reaction is often just a mirror of habit, a pattern repeated without thought. But when you observe, when you study, when you pay attention, you break the cycle. You start to see why things happen, not just that they happen. You begin to understand the deeper mechanics of life, the cause and effect relationships that most overlook. And that understanding gives you an advantage in every area, whether it's in business, relationships, leadership, or personal growth. Imagine two people faced with the same challenge. One reacts instantly, driven by frustration, driven by fear, driven by the need to do something right now. They rush forward without strategy, and often their reaction creates even bigger problems. The other takes the same challenge, but instead of reacting, they step back, they watch, they study, they notice the moving parts, they listen, they let silence do the work. And when they finally act, their move is precise, calculated, powerful. The difference in the outcome is night and day. The one who reacted is exhausted and overwhelmed, while the one who observed and then acted achieves results with less energy, less resistance, and greater impact. Observation also builds resilience. Life will test you, people will test you, circumstances will test you. If your default mode is reaction, then every test becomes a storm that throws you off course. But if your default is observation, you become like a mountain unmoved by every gust of wind. You watch, you wait, you learn, and then you move with intention. That steadiness builds confidence not only in yourself, but in everyone around you. People begin to trust you because they sense you are not swayed by every little thing, and that you are not impulsive, that you can be relied upon to stay calm under pressure. That kind of presence is power in itself. Observation is also a discipline Because the human mind craves action, craves the rush of doing something, anything to relieve the discomfort of uncertainty. But when you practice observation and you train yourself to become comfortable in that space of uncertainty, you train yourself to hold back when every part of you wants to jump in. You cultivate patience, and patience itself is a form of power because it allows you to wait until the exact right moment instead of wasting energy on the wrong ones. The predator in nature knows this. The lion does not chase every shadow that moves. It waits. It studies, it observes. And then when the time is right, it acts with explosive precision. That is why it succeeds. Observation also deepens your connection with people. When you truly watch someone, when you pay attention not just to their words, but to their tone, their body language, their eyes, their pauses, you learn who they are beyond the surface. You learn what they fear, what they desire, what they hide. And when you know this, you can connect at a deeper level. You can influence more authentically. You can navigate relationships with greater ease. Most people listen only to reply, but the one who listens to observe discovers truths that others will never see. Reacting often comes from ego, from the need to prove yourself, from the need to defend, from the need to assert. Observing comes from strength, from knowing you do not need to reveal everything, from trusting that silence carries more weight than words thrown in haste. The person who reacts shows their hand, exposes their weakness, reveals their triggers. The person who observes keeps their strength intact, learns the landscape, waits for the right opening, and then moves with certainty. This is why true leaders, true masters of any craft, true builders of legacies are not reactive by nature. They have trained themselves to step back, to see the bigger picture, to delay the rush of immediate gratification in exchange for long-term advantage. They are not controlled by others because they do not give away their power through reaction. Instead, they remain grounded, rooted, observant, and then when the time comes to move, their action has more weight, more influence, more certainty than 100 reactions from others. What you stop chasing begins to come to you, because chasing often comes from a place of lack, from a belief that you don't already have enough, that you're not already enough, that the things you desire are running away from you, and you must run faster to catch them. But the truth is that the harder you chase, the more they slip through your fingers. Life has a way of responding to your energy. And when you project desperation, when you project neediness, when you project force, you create resistance. But when you let go, when you stop chasing, when you stop grasping so tightly, you open up space for the very things you desire to move toward you, to flow into your life with ease instead of struggle. Think about relationships. When you chase someone, when you cling to them, when you try to force them to notice you or value you, often they pull further away, not because they don't see you, but because the energy of chasing creates pressure, and pressure pushes people away. But when you stop chasing, when you stand in your own worth, when you radiate self-respect and confidence, people are drawn to you. They come toward you because you no longer need them to complete you, because you are completing yourself, and that magnetism is far more powerful than chasing ever could be. It works the same with opportunities. How many times have you wanted something so badly that you obsessed over it, tried to force it, chased every lead, only to end up frustrated and empty-handed? And then when you finally gave up, when you stopped pushing so hard, something clicked, and the right opportunity showed up at the right time, often in ways you couldn't have planned. That is not coincidence. That is the shift that happens when your energy moves from chasing to allowing. The universe responds not to your desperation, but to your alignment. When you are aligned, when you trust, when you stop forcing, what you desire begins to move toward you naturally. Chasing often blinds you to what is already available. And you're so focused on running after the thing you think you need that you miss the doors opening right in front of you. You're chasing the wrong job and ignoring the connections you've already built. You're chasing the wrong relationship and overlooking the people who already value you. You're chasing happiness in external things and missing the peace that could come from simply being still. When you stop chasing, You see what is already here. You notice the opportunities that were waiting. You realize that much of what you want is already around you, waiting for you to recognize it. There is a difference between pursuit and chasing. Pursuit is driven by vision, by clarity, by alignment. Pursuit is purposeful action, steady and intentional. Chasing is frantic, desperate, filled with fear that you'll miss out if you don't push harder. Pursuit flows, chasing drains. Pursuit comes from trust, chasing comes from doubt. And when you shift from chasing to trust, everything changes. The same actions done without desperation produce different results because the energy behind them is different. It's like trying to catch a butterfly. If you run after it frantically, it will fly further and further away, always out of reach. But if you stay still, calm, patient, often it lands near you, sometimes right on your shoulder, because the energy of stillness is attractive, while the energy of chasing is repellent. Life works in the same way. The more you chase things, the further they move away. The more you allow, the more they gravitate towards you. When you stop chasing, you also stop signaling to yourself and to the world that you are incomplete. Chasing comes from a mindset of lack. It is the belief that until you have that thing, you are not whole, not fulfilled, not worthy. And that belief creates a cycle that never ends, because even when you catch one thing, the feeling of lack returns and you chase again. But when you let go of chasing, when you stand in a place of abundance, when you believe you already are enough, the dynamic shifts. You no longer need to grasp because you know your value is not dependent on what you catch. And from that place of wholeness, you attract more, not less. Chasing also creates tension in your body and mind. It keeps you in a state of restlessness, always running, never arriving. But when you stop chasing, you find peace, and that peace makes you more effective, more attractive, more magnetic. People can feel the difference between someone who is desperate and someone who is centered. They gravitate to the one who is grounded, who is not begging for attention or validation, because that person radiates strength. There's a hidden truth that the things we chase the hardest are often the ones we are least ready for. We think we need them right now, but in reality, if they came to us before we were aligned, before we were prepared, we wouldn't be able to hold them. Stopping the chase allows us to grow into the person who can actually handle the blessing when it arrives. The pause, the letting go, the stillness. It's not empty. It's preparing you, shaping you, aligning you so that when what you desire comes, you are ready to receive it fully. Think of water in your hands. If you squeeze too tightly, it slips out between your fingers. But if you hold your hand open, the water rests there naturally. That's the difference between chasing and allowing. Chasing squeezes. Allowing opens. Chasing creates resistance. Allowing creates flow. The things that are truly meant for you will not require desperate pursuit. They will meet you where you are when you stand in openness, when you stop running and allow them to arrive. The paradox of life is that when you no longer need something desperately, that is when you are most likely to receive it. The moment you detach, the moment you stop running, the energy shifts, opportunities appear, people notice you, doors open. And because you are no longer blinded by desperation, you can actually see and seize them. It feels almost effortless compared to the exhaustion of chasing, because it is not about struggle, but about alignment. Stopping the chase doesn't mean giving up ambition. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means shifting the energy behind your action. It means moving from fear to trust, from lack to abundance, from desperation to certainty. You still take steps, you still move forward, but you are not running frantically after something outside yourself. Instead, you are allowing life to meet you halfway, allowing your desires to come toward you as you move with confidence instead of panic. Silence is not weakness, it is hidden strength, because in a world that glorifies constant talking, constant proving, constant explaining, the ability to stay quiet becomes a rare and powerful form of mastery. Most people assume that the loudest voice is the strongest, that the one who dominates the room with words is the leader, but more often than not, the person who speaks less and listens more holds the real authority. Silence has weight, silence carries energy, Silence shifts the balance of power because when you are not rushing to fill the air with words, you signal confidence, patience, and control. Weakness needs to be heard. Strength can afford to wait. There is a discipline in choosing silence when your ego is begging to respond, when you want to defend yourself, when you want to prove your point. That discipline is not weakness, it is strength refined. To bite back words that would satisfy you in the moment but cost you in the long run requires self-control, and self-control is the essence of power. The person who is provoked but does not react immediately, who feels anger rise but does not let it spill into the world, who notices the urge to prove themselves but holds it back, that person is not weak, they are strong beyond measure. Silence also magnifies your presence. When you walk into a room and you don't immediately try to dominate, when you let others reveal themselves while you remain centered, people begin to feel your gravity. They notice you without you forcing it. They lean in without you asking. They wait for you to speak because your silence makes them curious. Words are everywhere. Silence is rare, and what is rare always holds more value. People listen more carefully when someone who is usually silent chooses to speak because silence has conditioned them to expect that those words will matter. Silence allows you to see what others miss. While everyone else is busy speaking, defending, interrupting, you are watching, listening, learning. You notice the details in body language. You pick up on tone shifts. You catch the inconsistencies in their words. Silence gives you an informational advantage. It makes you a better leader, a better negotiator, a better friend, a better human, because you're not blinded by the sound of your own voice. Those who equate silence with weakness overlook the fact that silence is what equips you to see, to understand, to make better moves. There is strength in silence because it requires you to be comfortable with yourself. Weakness needs validation. It needs to be heard. It needs approval from outside. Strength is being grounded enough to know you don't have to prove anything. When you can be silent, and it means you don't fear what people think, you don't need to announce your value, you don't need to convince anyone. That kind of inner security is far more powerful than external noise. People who are strong inside don't need to shout it, they embody it, and their silence communicates more than words ever could. Think of the great leaders throughout history who understood the power of silence. They knew when to pause in a speech, letting silence draw on the audience more than words could. They knew when to hold their tongue in negotiation, letting the silence push the other side into revealing too much. They knew that silence is not empty. It creates pressure. It builds anticipation. It changes the dynamics of interaction. Weakness needs to fill space. Strength knows the space is already enough. Silence is also strength because it allows you to conserve energy. Every word you speak is energy spent, and most of the time it changes nothing. But when you choose silence, you save that energy, you redirect it into observation, into strategy, into presence. That conservation makes you more effective when you finally do act. Instead of being drained by constant talking, you become focused, intentional, precise. Silence builds a reservoir of strength within you, a strength that grows with every moment you refuse to waste on meaningless noise. In conflict, silence is often the strongest position you can take. Arguments escalate because people keep reacting, keep adding fuel to the fire, but silence removes oxygen from the flames. It forces the other person to confront their own energy, their own noise, their own imbalance. Silence disarms aggression. It creates space for reflection. It signals unshakable confidence. To remain calm and quiet when provoked is not weakness, and it is evidence of a power that does not need to shout to be felt. Silence also deepens your connection to yourself. In silence, you hear your own thoughts, your own intuition, your own inner voice that gets drowned out by constant talking. Weakness runs from silence because it is uncomfortable to be alone with oneself, but strength embraces it because that is where clarity lives. In silence, you build a relationship with yourself that no outside force can take away, and that relationship becomes a foundation of strength in every area of your life. Silence is not about absence, it is about presence. When you choose silence, you become more aware of your surroundings, more aware of people, more aware of yourself. You radiate a different kind of energy, one that does not demand attention but naturally commands it. Weakness is loud because it is insecure. Strength is quiet because it is certain. You don't need to announce who you are when you know who you are. Silence communicates that certainty without a single word, even in moments of ambition and pursuit. And silence is strength because it allows you to move with patience instead of desperation. The one who is silent can wait longer, endure more, resist the pull of instant gratification. That endurance is strength. The one who cannot sit in silence, who cannot wait, who must always speak or act, is weak because they are ruled by impulse. But the one who chooses silence rules themselves, and self-mastery is the highest form of power. Silence has always been mistaken for weakness because people confuse volume with strength. But true strength does not need validation. It does not need to be broadcast. It does not need applause. True strength sits quietly, and yet it is undeniable. Silence is not a void, it is a force. It shapes the space around it. It shifts the energy in the room. It holds presence that no amount of noise can match. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe.